Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, we're going back. At the time of this recording, it is Hip Hop Month. It's been Hip Hop Week. If you've been hiding under a rock or you missed the memo, I said this week we're going to dedicate to hip hop. We're going to celebrate hip hop, as you many of you know, or maybe you don't know. Hip hop turned 50. It's 50 years old. So a part of the celebration in hip hop turning 50, what I wanted to do was highlight and do an album review for some albums that weren't anniversary albums, um, albums that I hadn't reviewed yet, and just albums that really, to me, came at a specific time in my life and that I guess you could say resonated with me, if you will. And with that being said, on this episode, this album that I'm going to talk about is one that did just that. Um, the album that we're going to review is As Nasty as They Want to Be by the Two Live Crew. Now, I know you're probably thinking, why in the hell are you reviewing an album from the Two Live Crew? I'll be honest, this album definitely resonated with me. This album was released February 7th, 1989. And I was in high school at the time. I think I was like, I want to say 10th grade. Um, and so, relatively young. Um, I was very familiar with Two Live Crew. This was their third studio album. I want to say I had the tape for their first two albums as well. And I do remember getting this album as well. I didn't purchase it. I copped the dub from one of the homies. But this album definitely resonated with me, and I'll kind of explain why. Um, if you're familiar with Two Live Crew, um, I mean, it goes without saying that they are legendary for a lot of different reasons. Of course, the members of Two Live Crew, if you don't know, uh, Kid Fresh Ice. Oh, no, excuse me, Fresh Ice Kid. No, it was Fresh Kid Ice. I'm sorry, Fresh Kid Ice, Mr. Mix, Brother Marquise, and of course, Luke Skywalker at the time. And now he's known as Uncle Luke. But those guys from Miami really introduced the Miami bass sound to rap, and it was something different. I think first and foremost, like for me, they were the first acts to come from the South. Um, there may have been others, but honestly, I don't remember any rappers coming from the South, period, other than Luke and the Two Live Crew. Now, again, they weren't known as supreme lyricists. They weren't going to be any threat to, LL or Run DMC or Rakim, but they had their lane. And like them or hate them, they were definitely a staple in rap. It wasn't called hip hop at the time because, again, this is 1989. Um, but their impact, um, their style, what they rapped about, which we'll get into in just a second, was very unique. And I think going out on a limb, I'm not going out on a limb by saying they were very rare. There was no other, there was nobody out like that crew. Um, and I think that it's safe to say just that. But yeah, the album, As Nasty as They Want to Be, released February 7th, 1989. Again, it was what we used to call booty shake music. And so let me go back a little bit. For me, again, I was in high school, so I'm in like 10th grade, I guess. And this music was so different from what I was used to listening to. I was used to listening to LL. I was used to listening to Run DMC, Eric B. and Rakim, EPMD, all of these Slick Rick, all of these artists are the BDP. These artists are the artists that I'm listening to on a constant basis. And then Luke and the Two Live Crew come in, and again, they were totally different from anything else that you would hear. Obviously, they didn't get, the first couple of albums didn't get a lot of radio play for obvious reasons. But they were an act that I think me and a lot of my friends, we kind of gravitated towards. Other than them just being wild and just saying whatever on record. But honestly, the music still did resonate with me. I can't lie. One of the reasons is that at this particular time in hip hop, or rap, if you will, because it was, like I said, it was called rap. Kids my age really were going to gravitate towards something that was away from the norm. We were going to gravitate towards something that we probably shouldn't be delving into, but because your parents didn't want you to listen to it, honestly, that made you want to listen even more. And I've always said, like, even as a parent, be careful about what you ban your kids from doing, because in you banning them, sometimes that creates the interest and the intrigue for them to, tap into it. Now, I ain't talking about drugs, but I mean, even sometimes something as simple as drugs and alcohol. But for me, this wasn't something that I could play out loud. Like, I literally had to put that in my Walkman tape deck and, Walkman and walk around or whatever like that with headphones on. I mean, this wasn't something that you could listen to out loud because my mom wasn't trying to hit. I mean, my mom she made me throw away at least she told me to throw away my Eazy-E tape. And so, if Eazy-E got thrown out, Two Live Crew wasn't going to last. But I think for me, and again, I can only speak for me and my friends, the way we grew up in Florence, South Carolina, like it was something that you wasn't supposed to listen to. So given the fact that it was something that we weren't supposed to listen to, that made me want to listen even more. And so I was intrigued by what he was talking about. Again, I mean, at that particular time, I'm in high school. Of course, I know what sex is and whatever, but it was different. Now, if I had to describe Two Live Crew for somebody who did not know what Two Live Crew was or who they were, Two Live Crew and their music was abrasive. It was raunchy. It was obscene. It was problematic. It was misogynistic. It was offensive. It was a little bit of everything that you would not want anybody that's 12 or 13 years old to hear, right? And we loved it. We loved it. We couldn't get enough of it. One, because up until then, I didn't know that you could come and put out a tape or an album or whatever, weren't CDs at the time. I didn't know that you could put music out and just say the stuff that they were saying. Stuff was crass. It was vile. It was nasty. And we loved it. We really loved it. And the more that people told us that we shouldn't be listening, we listened. It is what it is. And one of the great things about this particular era of music, because rap wasn't so readily available, sometimes you had to sneak around to get stuff. So an album like As Nasty As They Want to Be there's certain record stores you could go into and you couldn't find it. Not on the shelves, but you know what? They had it in the back. So, it was a little bit of everything. Now, I'll be the first to admit, now, again, they weren't lyrical. They weren't spitting, lyrical miracles or anything like that would blow you away. It was a lot of foul and crass and, like I said, offensive lyrics. I mean, depending on who you are, because some people that it's just talk. And for others, I could see how somebody could listen to it and be really offended by what was being said, because it was very degrading. And honestly, because I knew that this was going to be an album that I was going to review, I had to go back and listen to it. And even in going back and listening to it, I was like, you're like, I'll be honest, because I had not listened to this album in its entirety, probably in some years. Let me get into the tracks real quick. So the album starts off with the ever popular and chart topping Me So Horny. Now everybody knows this song. This is a staple in Two Live Crew's catalog. I can't necessarily call it a banger, but everybody knows it. And I mean, come on, man, Me So Horny. But I mean, it did get airplay, did get video play. Track 2, Put Her in the Buck. And it's funny because as I read some of these lyrics, the teenage me is laughing at these lyrics because I remember the songs and I remember the how it went down. Track 3, Dick Almighty. Track 4, the ever popular Come On Babe. Then we get to track 5, Dirty Nursery Rhymes. Then you get to track 6, Break It On Down. Track 7, Two Live Blues. And track 8, which was one of my boys' favorite songs, I Ain't Bullshitting. Then you get track 9, Get Loose Now. And then you get to track 10, The Fuck Shop. Now I want to pause real quick. The Fuck Shop was every time I think about that song, I think about this one scenario. And some of you may be familiar with this. Back in the day, there was a TV show. There was a daytime TV show, this talk show host by the name of Phil Donahue. I think Phil is still alive. But anyway, very popular show. Phil Donahue had a TV show, daytime TV show, talk show that came on, and he'd bring different people or whatever like that. And his audiences and the people that probably watched this show were much like him, middle-aged white people. And so the question of obscenity and obscene music, which I'll get into in a second as it relates to this album, that came into play. And so on this particular episode, Phil Donahue decides to invite Uncle Luke, Luther Campbell, Luke Skywalker, whoever you want to call him. They invite Uncle Luke and the crew to perform as well as be interviewed by Phil Donahue. And Luke and the Two Live Crew perform a song called the song that I just mentioned, called the Fuck Shop. Now they cleaned it up obviously for TV. It's called the Funk Shop, but they are on stage on the panel or whatever like that performing, and there's some women up there, Two Live Crew dancers, Luke dancers, if you will, and they're up there. We didn't call it twerking back then, but they, were shaking their ass, they're twerking or whatever, and the looks on these people's faces. Again, middle-aged white people, and you got Luke and these his crew spitting the most obscene lyrics. Well, I mean, they're not beeping it. They actually are spitting the clean version, but it's still dirty. The clean version of the song. And the women up there dancing, the Luke dancers dancing. Man, as you see the camera panning and going to different people and stuff like that, their faces, oh my God, priceless. Do yourself a favor. After you finish listening to this podcast, if you want to see it, I'm sure it's still on YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Donahue Show, Two Live Crew. That's it. You will laugh your ass off. I mean, it is one of the funniest things. So every time I think about the Fuck Shop, I remember that. I remember that episode of Donahue. Then you get to track 11, If You Believe in Having Sex. Track 12, My Seven Bizzos. Track 13, Get the Fuck Out of My House. Then you got track 14, Reggae Joint, which was a satire of dancehall music. Then you get track 15, Fraternity Record. Then you move to track 16, Badass Bitch. Track 17, Mega Mix 3. And then last but not least, track 18, Coolin'. Now, this album, as nasty as they want to be, like I said, it's about almost 80 minutes long, 79 minutes, 30 seconds. It was released on Atlantic Records. This album, certified platinum. I mean, it was platinum on, on the charts, but it was probably um quadruple platinum in the streets, because when I tell you, everybody had this tape. Everybody had the Luke tape. And this album is famous. It's famous because when it came out, the powers that be in law actually deemed this album legally obscene. It was pulled off shelves in stores. Members of the Two Live Crew were arrested at points in different points in time for performing the songs. Now, the ruling was later overturned by an 11th Circuit judge who said that the album was not obscene. It was not. They didn't deem it obscene, but it was the first album to get the parental advisory sticker on the album, meaning that if you weren't 17 years old, you could not purchase this album without the accompaniment of an adult. Um, and that's why I had the dub, because I couldn't go to Ray's record store in Florence, South Carolina, and purchase this tape. And it was it obscene? I mean, I guess it depends on what you define as obscene. But Luke, credit to him, and this doesn't get talked about enough in hip hop circles, but Luke and the Two Live Crew fought for their First Amendment rights to rap and say whatever they wanted to say. Now, of course, you had pushback from people like Tipper Gore and people in Congress who did not want to see this album on shelves. And part of the reason is because this album, much like a lot of rap albums at the time, but this one in particular, was doing what we call crossing over. So it crossed over. So it was no longer being listened to by mostly black kids. White kids found this album. And once the white kids found this album took off. They released 4 singles from this album. They released obviously the first single, "Me So Horny." They released "Come On Babe" in February of 1989. The Fuck Shop was released in 1990, and then the final song that was released was "Coolin'." But no, what happened was, if this album does not get found by white kids that live in the suburbs, then maybe the controversy never happens. Maybe it's never legally deemed obscene. But yeah, trust and believe. Biff bought this tape. He bought it home, and he was playing it out loud, and his mom could not believe what she heard when she heard it playing from his stereo. And she got upset. She told Biff's dad. Biff's dad got mad, and they started a charge to, legally have this album removed off of shelves. And in 1989, you couldn't do that. Well, they did, at least briefly. But again, like I said, it was thrown out by the 11th Circuit judge that says that the album was not legally obscene. And what it did was it sparked a controversy between people on one side and people on the other side as to define what was obscene. And Luke and the Two Live Crew really split down the line, because technically, in theory, and they make a great case for it, he wasn't saying anything. There's no lyrics in there that tell you to shoot somebody or rape somebody or anything like that. And Luke made the point: we're consenting adults. We're talking about having sex with between consenting adults. So, and with that being said, that's not obscene. We're just talking about it. According to Luke, he would say, we're talking about it in quote unquote our special way, close quote. And to his credit, he was correct. The First Amendment, while freedom of speech ain't totally free, in this case it was. And so the album wasn't, it wasn't obscene. Now, again, it depends on what your definition of obscenity is. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that I had to go back and listen to this album just for, just because I hadn't listened to it in a while. I've heard singles here and there, but I haven't, I know I haven't sat and listened to this album in over 10 years. And of course, for me, when I went to go back and listen to it I pulled it up on Spotify. First thing comes up is the album cover. And the album cover is still crazy to this day that they pull that off. And I'm sure that most of you, or at least some of you, probably will agree with me. This is one of the top 5 album covers of hip hop of all time. You got the members of the 2 Live Crew laying down flat on the beach, and they're in between the legs of 4 voluptuous women. Now, keep in mind that these women are, they got it, but they don't, they not. This is before BBLs, baby. This is before you had to, you get your little lipo or whatever like that. So these were natural women, natural black women, I should say. And so the album cover in and of itself made you it to me, it makes me chuckle because it transports me back to being a kid in high school. But as I listened to the album, I was like, I was kind of bugging because I was like, damn, I really listened to this. Like, it wasn't nothing appealing about this album. Listening to it as a 50-year-old, I wasn't offended by anything, but I did ask myself, like, how could you have sat through 79 minutes and 30 seconds of this? Because after, I guess the best way I could put it is like this. It's cool for the first 3 or 4 songs. And then after that, like, as a fan of music, as a fan of rap at the time, I probably would have been more like, okay, y'all need to rap about something else. Like, because after a while, the theme of the music kind of wears on you. It's like, okay, man, there's only but so many ways you can say or so many stories you can tell. But I will give Luke and the rest of the 2 Live Crew credit. They stretched that out. And I mean, as far as production wise, the beats are banging. And if nothing else, you're gonna jam. You're gonna bop your head to it. That's for sure. But was it a groundbreaking album? No. Well, can you put it up there with, Paid in Full or Illmatic or any of the other greats? No. But what you can say about this album is that it was a groundbreaking album. From the perspective of Luke and the 2 Live Crew being able to say whatever. And they are the reason why rappers of today can get on the mic and say whatever they want to say. And, for people who still buy albums or buy CDs or buy tapes, that parental advisory sticker is still there. But I'll be honest, after we got over the novelty of that sticker being there, probably by 1990, 1991, it didn't matter. Like, you didn't care. And honestly, places like Ray's Records in Florence, South Carolina, they got to a point where they weren't going to try to keep themselves from selling, the new Scarface CD or the new Ghetto Boy CD or the new whatever, because it didn't fit in that same category. I mean, like, no, there were people that literally got locked up for selling 2 Live Crew albums. But after that, I mean, once you had the parental advisory sticker, I've never been any other place that I can remember, even before I turned 17, and somebody said, oh, this has a parental advisory sticker, you can't purchase this album. No, my money greened. So they were going to take it. And a lot of times I will talk about in an album review, like, if it was a 5 mic album, if I'm being honest, giving this album mics, it's probably about I'd probably say it's excuse me, I'd probably say it's maybe 2.5. It's okay. It doesn't blow me away. I mean, but again, that's 50-year-old ears. Now, in 89, I probably would have given it like a 3.5. But it's solid. It served its purpose, and I think more than anything else, Luke never. I'm not gonna say never. He hasn't, I don't think, publicly gotten the credit that he deserves for breaking down that door as far as being able to express yourself and say whatever you want to say. Now, you have an opportunity and a right as a consumer not to purchase this album. And Luke always said, our music ain't for everybody, but for those who get down, can get down, and they know how to find our music. And he was right. And Luke was a trailblazer in that aspect, regardless of whether or not you think he can rap, regardless of whether or not you liked his music, regardless of whether or not you thought his music was obscene. He's a pioneer in this aspect. And this album was just that. And the cool thing about this album is, for as much slack as they caught for As Nasty as They Want to Be, Luke, being the businessman that he was, also created another album called As Clean as They Want to Be. And this didn't have any curse words. They changed some of the songs. So like the Fuck Shop became the Funk Shop, so it didn't have all the songs on it, but the cool part about it was he gave an alternative, or had presented an alternative for those who didn't want to buy the dirty version. You could buy the clean version. Now, I'll be honest, at least amongst me and my peers, nobody's getting that clean version. You might get that clean version maybe if you wanted to play it out, play it in your room or something like that. But nobody wasn't buying 2 tapes. So no, I'm gonna get the dirty version. I'm gonna put it in my tape deck. I'm gonna put it in my Walkman. I'm gonna put my headphones on, and my mom will never hear it. So that's how it was. But it was good going back and checking out this album. I will implore you to do the same. If you do, put your 1989 ears on as opposed to your 2023 ears on. But you got to give Uncle Luke his props, and I think, like I said, it's a good album. It was definitely an album for the time, and this was good going down memory lane, because again, it takes me back to being a teenager again, and I think this album, while it is a lot of things to a lot of different people, for me, it was a cool album, and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the fact that in '89, people told us not to listen, and we listened anyway. And that's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes. This is Hip Hop Week, so we're going to drop an album review every day this week, and then culminating on Thursday at the time of this recording. Make sure that you subscribe. The podcast can be found on all DSPs, YouTube channel as well, so you can check us out on YouTube. If you feel so inclined, hit us up on Cash App. Throw a couple of dollars to the podcast. $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle. This has been an album review of 2 Live Crews, As Nasty as They Want to Be. Again, I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.